Jungkook pulled Jimin close during the interview. His whisper was too romantic, loudly crying face fire revolving hearts. The moment the studio lights flared to life, the world saw Jungkook's hand shoot forward and grip Jimin's wrist, not softly, not playfully, but with a sudden urgency that stole the air from every person in the room. "Don't move," Jungkook whispered, his breath barely a brush of sound, his eyes burning with something too intense to hide. The cameras were rolling. Millions were watching live. And Jimin froze. The interview had been chaotic from the start, the energy in the room unstable, unpredictable, almost electric. Something had been simmering between them all week, half-spoken arguments, late-night silences, small tremors of something unaddressed. No one expected it to explode in the middle of a live broadcast. Yet here they were, sitting on the glossy black couch beneath blinding studio lights, trying to look composed while their hearts ran wild beneath their ribs. Jimin's breath trembled first. He could feel the heat of Jungkook's grip, the slight tremor in the younger man's fingers, the tension hidden in his shoulders. Jungkook was steady on the surface, flawlessly calm as he turned back toward the interviewer, but Jimin knew that posture. That mask. He'd seen it too many times. On nights Jungkook pretended not to be afraid, on days he refused to show he was hurting. The interviewer continued speaking, unaware or pretending not to notice the thick air stretching between them. Fans in the comments were already exploding. The staff behind the cameras exchanged frantic glances as Jungkook shifted closer without warning, his knee brushing Jimin's, his voice dropping low enough to avoid the microphones. "They were going to corner you," Jungkook murmured, still smiling politely for the camera. "I saw the question card. I wasn't going to let them." Jimin's pulse tripped. The question. The one he'd been dreading since morning. The one that would have pushed him into a confession he wasn't prepared to make. He swallowed, eyes flickering away, trying to stabilize himself, but Jungkook's presence pressed against him so closely there was nowhere for his thoughts to hide. Why would you grab me like that on live TV? Jimin whispered back, voice trembling despite the steady expression he maintained for the audience. "Because you were shaking," Jungkook said, almost too quietly to hear. "You didn't even notice." Jimin blinked. He hadn't noticed. He'd walked into the studio with a practiced smile, but his nerves had betrayed him. Jungkook saw everything. He always did. The interviewer switched topics, asking about their new project, but Jungkook's hand still lingered around Jimin's wrist, thumb brushing the inside where his pulse hammered. When he finally loosened his grip, he didn't pull away. His fingers settled lightly against Jimin's palm, hidden between their bodies, unseen by the cameras, but unmistakably there. Jimin tried to breathe normally. He tried to look unaffected. But Jungkook's voice slipped into his ear again, softer now, so intimate it sent heat crawling up his neck. "I need you to stay close today," Jungkook murmured. "Don't drift away from me again." Again. Jimin's heart tightened. A word that held far too many ghosts. The rest of the interview blurred into a haze. They answered questions, shared jokes, charmed the audience, but beneath every smile, every glance, something deeper pulsed. Jungkook kept leaning in, as if he feared Jimin would vanish if he didn't keep him within reach. Jimin kept pretending not to notice, though his mind raced with memories he'd tried to bury. The night everything between them had cracked. The night Jimin walked out without explanation. The night Jungkook didn't chase him. After the cameras finally cut, the studio dropped into a dimmer, quieter atmosphere. Staff rushed around gathering equipment. Chairs scraped across the floor. Someone laughed in the distance. Yet in the middle of all that noise, Jimin felt strangely isolated, his world narrowed to the warmth lingering on his wrist. Jungkook stood slowly, stretching muscles that had been tense for an hour, but his eyes never left Jimin, not even for a second. When Jimin rose from the couch, Jungkook stepped into his space, close enough that Jimin could feel his breath against his cheek. "You didn't like that," Jungkook said quietly. Not apologizing. Not explaining. Simply observing. Jimin lifted his chin, masking the storm behind a gentle smile. "You surprised me, that's all." "That's not all," Jungkook replied, shaking his head. "You were scared." Jimin's chest tightened again. "Of the question," he corrected. Jungkook paused, and his expression shifted. Something old and raw flickered through his eyes. "Not just the question." The words landed like a stone between them. For a moment, all the unspoken things rose to the surface: fear, longing, regret, the fragile thread of something neither had dared name. Jungkook's voice softened further, almost trembling. You think I don't see it? You pull away every time you get overwhelmed. You shut me out. And you think I don't care? Jimin felt heat behind his eyes, sharp and sudden. I'm not shutting you out. You are, Jungkook insisted. But I'm not letting you disappear this time. The studio felt too small. The lights too bright. Jungkook too close. Jimin stepped back, but Jungkook caught his wrist again, gently this time, gently enough that Jimin could break free if he wanted to, but he didn't. He stood there, breathing in the familiar scent of Jungkook's cologne, feeling the weight of his sincerity pressing into him. Why are you doing this? Jimin whispered. Jungkook leaned in so close Jimin could feel every syllable against his skin because, Jungkook whispered, I can't pretend anymore. The world around them blurred. The staff, the stage, the noise, everything faded into the background. For a fleeting second, it felt as if they were the only two people left in the room, suspended in a truth that had been waiting far too long to be spoken. But then Jungkook let go. He stepped back, composed himself, mask sliding back into place. Let's talk later, he said, voice steady but eyes trembling with everything he didn't say. Jimin nodded, even as his heart thudded painfully in his chest. Jimin didn't go home that night. The studio hallway felt too tight, too full of echoes from everything Jungkook had said, too full of the things Jimin had tried to forget. He walked until his legs trembled, until the corridor opened into the dim, unoccupied rehearsal room where the mirrors reflected his shaking breath back at him. He shut the door behind him. The quiet swallowed him whole. His mind replayed the moment Jungkook grabbed his wrist during the interview, those fingers, warm and trembling, the whisper that carried too much truth, the look in his eyes that Jimin had spent a year trying not to drown in. Jimin leaned against the wall, head tilted back, breath uneven. He wasn't sure if he was angry or terrified or something far more dangerous. Why now? He whispered to the empty room. Why do you say things like that now? The door clicked open. Jungkook stepped inside. He closed the door gently, not slamming it, not demanding attention, just entering with a quiet certainty that turned Jimin's stomach into a storm. You didn't answer your phone, Jungkook said, breathless, like he'd been searching everywhere. Jimin swallowed hard. I needed space. No, Jungkook said softly. You needed to run. And I'm tired of watching you run. Jimin stiffened. I'm not running. You're always running. Jungkook's voice cracked, just barely. You think I don't notice every time you pull away? Every time you shut down? Every time you smile just to hide that you're hurting? Jimin turned toward the mirrors so Jungkook wouldn't see the sudden tremor in his expression. But Jungkook stepped closer, too close, until Jimin could see his reflection standing right behind him, their eyes meeting in the glass. You don't get to hide from me tonight, Jungkook whispered, breath hot against Jimin's shoulder. Jimin's heartbeat stumbled. You don't get to corner me like this. I'm not cornering you. Jungkook's hand lifted, slowly, giving Jimin every chance to pull away, before resting lightly on his arm. I'm trying to talk to you before you disappear again. Jimin's chest tightened. You think I wanted to disappear? You did. Jungkook's voice was gentle but sharp. The night you walked out without a word. The night you left me standing there, wondering what I did wrong. Jimin flinched. The memory hit him like cold water, the argument, the slammed door, the silence that stretched for weeks. Jungkook lowered his voice, eyes locked onto Jimin's reflection. You didn't even give me a chance to fix it. You wouldn't have listened, Jimin muttered, throat tight. You never told me what I needed to hear, Jungkook said. You kept it inside until it tore you apart. Jimin spun around, anger and pain twisting together. And you, what about you, Jungkook? You act like you know everything that goes on in my head, but you don't. You don't understand what it's like to be scared of your own feelings. Jungkook blinked, hurt flickering across his face. I understand more than you think. Jimin's breath trembled. You don't. Every time I got too close, you laughed it off. Brushed it aside. Treated it like a game. Jungkook stepped forward, voice low and trembling. It wasn't a game. You made it feel like one. It wasn't, Jungkook said again, stronger this time. I was scared too. Jimin stared at him, stunned. Jungkook let out a shaky breath. I didn't know what to do with how I felt around you. I didn't know how to say it without ruining everything. And then you left. You didn't give me a chance to figure it out. Jungkook moved closer until their foreheads almost touched. So don't tell me I didn't feel anything. Don't tell me I didn't try. Jimin's heart thudded painfully. Then why didn't you say something back then? I thought I had time, Jungkook whispered. I thought you'd stay. Silence filled the room again, heavy and intimate. Jimin looked away, trying to steady his breath, but Jungkook's hand gently cupped the side of his jaw, careful, hesitant, almost trembling. Jimin froze. Jungkook's voice softened. I'm not asking for answers tonight. I'm not asking you to decide anything. His thumb brushed lightly against Jimin's cheek, and Jimin felt heat bloom under his skin. All I want, Jungkook continued, is for you to stop pretending you don't feel anything. Jimin shut his eyes, too tightly, too suddenly. It's not that simple. It is, Jungkook said. You're scared. I get that. But don't push me away because of it. Jimin stepped back, the space between them suddenly cold. I don't know what I feel anymore. Everything is a mess. Jungkook didn't follow. He just watched him with an aching softness that made Jimin's chest burn. Then let me stay in the mess with you, Jungkook whispered. You don't have to sort it out alone. Jimin's throat tightened. He wanted to argue. He wanted to push Jungkook back. But the sincerity in Jungkook's voice left him breathless. You can't just say things like that, Jimin whispered weakly. Why not? Jungkook asked. They're true. Jimin's eyes glistened, emotions crashing into him too fast to process. He turned away again, hugging his arms around himself, trying to steady the storm inside him. Jungkook walked up slowly, footsteps soft as he approached Jimin from behind. Not touching him this time, just standing close enough for Jimin to feel his warmth. When Jungkook finally spoke, his voice was quiet but sure. Whatever happened before, whatever broke between us, I'm willing to fix it. If you are. Jimin breathed out shakily, the weight of everything pressing against his ribs. I don't know how. I'll help you, Jungkook murmured. Just let me in. Jimin didn't move. Didn't answer. Didn't run. He simply let himself breathe in the presence of someone he had spent too long avoiding, and for tonight, that was enough. Jungkook didn't leave the rehearsal room even after Jimin's breathing steadied. He stood behind him quietly, the soft hum of the air conditioner the only sound between them. It was strange how silence with Jungkook used to feel like peace, but now felt like a storm gathering behind closed eyes. Jimin finally turned, his expression guarded but less frantic than before. You shouldn't be here this late, he murmured. Jungkook's lips curled into a small, wry smile. Then tell me to go. Jimin hesitated. That was all Jungkook needed to know. He stepped closer, stopping only when Jimin's breath caught. Jimin lifted a hand instinctively, not to push away but to create space that neither of them truly wanted. Don't do that, Jungkook said softly. Don't act like you're afraid of me. Jimin's voice trembled. I'm afraid of what this means. The confession slipped out before he could stop it. Jungkook's eyes softened instantly, and he reached up, gently tracing the air near Jimin's cheek but not quite touching. Then let me be the one who's brave this time, he whispered. Those words hit Jimin harder than any confrontation. Bravery. The last time they had spoken honestly, both of them had run from the truth, one in silence, the other in frustration. Jimin lowered his eyes, fighting the warmth rising in his chest. You think being brave is pulling me close on live TV? Jimin asked, trying to lighten the intensity but failing miserably. Jungkook huffed a breath, something between a laugh and a sigh. No. That was instinct. Jimin raised an eyebrow. Instinct. You were panicking, Jungkook said. And I reacted. I didn't plan it. I didn't think. I just grabbed you. Jimin remembered the heat of Jungkook's hand on his wrist, the tremor in his voice, the whisper too intimate to be accidental. Instinct wasn't the right word for what he felt. Something deeper had pushed Jungkook to act, something neither of them was ready to name. Jungkook moved around him, walking toward the mirror and leaning forward, palms pressed against the glass as if searching for answers in his own reflection. I messed up today, he said quietly. I shouldn't have touched you like that on camera. Jimin walked closer. Then why did you? Jungkook looked up through the mirror, meeting Jimin's eyes with a raw vulnerability he rarely showed. Because I can't stand seeing you hide your fear. Not when I know I can help you. Not when I know you trust me more than anyone. Jimin's breath stuttered. Trust. The word tasted bitter and sweet, a contradiction that lived between them like a shadow. Behind Jungkook, the reflection of Jimin shifted closer, drawn by something beyond logic. Jungkook turned around slowly, his expression tightening when he saw the conflict on Jimin's face. What are you so afraid of? Jungkook asked gently. Tell me the truth. Jimin swallowed hard. I'm afraid of losing everything. Jungkook took a step. Jimin didn't back away. Losing who? Jungkook asked. The group. The fans. Yourself. Jimin didn't answer, so Jungkook stepped closer, voice dropping. Or losing me. Jimin's breath hitched so sharply it felt like a confession. Jungkook's eyes softened with something warm and painful. You think if you let yourself feel something real, I'll walk away. Jimin's hands curled at his sides, nails digging into his palms. You left first, he whispered. You were the one who shut down when things got too what? Jungkook pressed. Too close. Too intense. Too honest. Jimin's lips parted, but no words came out. Jungkook's tone deepened, charged with frustration and longing that had been simmering for months. I didn't walk away because I wanted to. I walked away because I didn't know how to handle you. You made everything feel too real. Jimin stepped forward until they were nearly chest to chest, eyes wide, breathing shallow. He could feel Jungkook's pulse through the air between them. So what now? Jimin whispered. Do you want me to pretend today never happened? Do you want us to go back to acting normal? Jungkook shook his head. I want you to stop acting. Jimin blinked. Acting what? Acting like you don't want something more. The room thickened with heat. Jimin's voice wavered. You don't know what I want. Yes, I do, Jungkook said firmly. I see it every time you look at me and then look away. Every time your voice shakes when you say my name. Every time you flinch when I get too close, not because you hate it, but because you want more than you should. Jimin felt his knees weaken. Jungkook stepped closer, catching Jimin's breath, his presence overwhelming in the best and worst ways. You feel it too, Jungkook murmured. Don't deny it. Jimin's throat tightened. And what happens if I stop denying it? What happens then? Jungkook exhaled shakily. Then we deal with it. Together. The quiet hum of the room wrapped around them as Jungkook reached out again, slower this time, gentler, brushing a thumb along Jimin's jaw in a way that made Jimin's heartbeat stumble. You don't have to say anything tonight, Jungkook whispered. Just don't run from me again. Jimin finally met his eyes fully, letting Jungkook see the fear, the longing, the tangled mess of feelings he'd avoided for far too long. I'm trying, Jimin whispered. I really am. Jungkook's expression softened. Then that's enough for now. Jimin breathed out, a long, trembling sigh, and allowed himself, for the first time in a long time, to relax in Jungkook's presence instead of fighting it. Jungkook lowered his hand but stayed close, as if grounding him with nothing more than his existence. For a moment, the tension that had threatened to break them finally eased, not gone, not fixed, but gentler, no longer a blade pressed to the skin but a wound they could tend to together. Tonight, they didn't reach a perfect understanding, but they reached each other, and that was something Jimin hadn't felt in a very long time. Jungkook followed Jimin out of the rehearsal room as if afraid the distance between them might grow into something permanent again. The hallway was dim, lined with silent practice studios and posters of their early years, faces of their younger selves staring down like ghosts of a simpler time. Jimin walked slowly, his steps echoing softly, hands shoved in his pockets as if trying to hide the tremor in his fingers. You're still shaking, Jungkook said quietly behind him. Jimin kept walking. It's cold. It's not cold, Jungkook countered. It's you. Jimin stopped. He didn't turn, but his shoulders tensed, betraying him. Jungkook came closer, not touching, just stepping into that fragile space where breath mingled and the silence grew charged enough to sting. You don't have to pretend around me, Jungkook murmured. Not anymore. Jimin exhaled shakily. You're too close, Jungkook. And you don't move away, Jungkook whispered. That truth broke something in Jimin's composure. He turned, meeting Jungkook's eyes, dark, burning, full of something dangerous and tender all at once. Their faces were inches apart, the hallway's quiet amplifying every thud of their hearts. You keep doing this, Jimin said, voice trembling. pushing me, pulling me in, making everything confusing. I'm not trying to confuse you. I'm trying to make you see what's already there. Jimin shook his head. You make it sound easy. It could be, Jungkook replied. If you'd let it. Let what? Jimin whispered us, Jungkook said without hesitation. Whatever we are. Jimin's breath stilled. The moment the word us left Jungkook's mouth, the hallway became too narrow for denial. It felt reckless. It felt forbidden. It felt like everything Jimin had run from and everything he'd secretly wanted. Jungkook's eyes softened, tracking every flicker of emotion crossing Jimin's face. Why do you hold back so much? He asked. What are you protecting yourself from? From you, Jimin said before he could stop himself. Jungkook froze, not hurt, not offended, just stunned. From me. Jimin nodded, voice breaking. You're unpredictable. You say things you don't realize are heavy, things that stay with me longer than they should. And when you act like it means nothing the next day, his voice faltered. It hurts, Jungkook. Jungkook's breath caught. I didn't know. You never asked, Jimin whispered. For a moment, Jungkook didn't move. Then, with careful slowness, he reached out and brushed his fingertips against Jimin's sleeve, soft, hesitant, like touching something sacred. Then tell me now, Jungkook said. Tell me what I did that hurt you. Jimin swallowed hard. You keep giving me hope. And then you pull back like it was all a joke. Jungkook shook his head immediately. It was never a joke. You made it feel like one. Because I was scared, Jungkook said, voice cracking. You weren't the only one confused. I didn't know how to deal with the way I felt around you. I still don't. But I'm trying. Jimin's chest tightened at the raw honesty in Jungkook's tone. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't neatly wrapped. It was messy and vulnerable and real. Why now? Jimin asked, quieter. Why are you pushing all of this now? Because I'm tired of pretending, Jungkook answered. And because I'm scared you'll slip away again if I don't hold on to you before it's too late. Something shifted between them, the air thickening, the tension turning sharp enough to cut. Jungkook stepped closer, slowly, giving Jimin time to stop him. Jimin didn't move, their foreheads were nearly touching now. Jimin could feel Jungkook's breath, warm and uneven, brushing his lips when he spoke. Let me be honest tonight, Jungkook whispered. Just tonight. Just once. Let me say what I've wanted to say for too long. Jimin's voice barely came out. Jungkook, but Jungkook didn't let him finish. I didn't pull you close in the interview because I wanted to protect you, Jungkook said. I pulled you close because I wanted to be close. Jimin's breath trembled violently. I didn't whisper because I had to, Jungkook continued. I whispered because the thought of anyone else hearing what I wanted to say scared me more than saying it to you. Jimin's heart hammered so loudly he wondered if Jungkook could hear it. And I didn't grab your wrist to stop you from panicking, Jungkook whispered. I grabbed it because I needed to feel you. To remind myself you were real. Jimin's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I thought you didn't want this, Jungkook said. But today you didn't pull away. Jimin's eyes were wet, though no tears had fallen. I didn't know how to. Jungkook lifted a hand, slow and tentative, brushing his thumb along the corner of Jimin's mouth, not touching fully, but close enough to make Jimin's lips part in a shaky breath. I'm not asking for anything tonight, Jungkook whispered. I'm not asking you to choose, or confess, or define anything. Jimin stared at him, trembling. All I'm asking, Jungkook said, voice soft, is to stay here with me. Don't walk away. Not tonight. Jimin closed his eyes. He could have said no. He could have walked. He could have protected himself the way he always did, but instead, slowly, almost fearfully, he reached up and touched Jungkook's wrist where it hovered near his face. His fingers curled lightly, grounding them both. I'm here, Jimin whispered. I'm not going anywhere. The hallway exhaled with them. The tension didn't disappear. The fear didn't vanish. Nothing was resolved. Nothing was perfect, but for the first time in a long time, the distance between them wasn't a threat. It was a choice, and tonight, neither of them chose to run. The storm outside had quieted, but inside the room the tension was still a living thing, sharp, trembling, almost too heavy to breathe in. Jimin stood with his back against the window, the faint city lights outlining the shape of his shoulders. Jungkook watched him silently from across the room, the air between them heavy with everything they had said, and everything they still hadn't dared to. Jimin finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "You can't keep doing this to me, Jungkook. Pulling me in, then pushing me away. I can't keep guessing what I am to you." Jungkook's jaw tightened as if the words physically hit him. He stepped closer, slowly, deliberately, eyes locked on Jimin's. "I never pushed you away," he said, the low gravity in his voice trembling with truth. "I pulled you closer because I couldn't stop myself. And that's the problem." Jimin blinked, startled by the honesty. Jungkook kept moving toward him until they were only inches apart. The room felt dangerously quiet, every heartbeat echoing through the walls. "What problem?" Jimin demanded softly. "Tell me the truth for once." Jungkook's breath shook as he finally let the words fall, unguarded, unfiltered. "The problem is that I'm in love with you in a way I can't hide anymore. And the closer you get, the harder it becomes to behave like I'm not." The confession dropped between them like thunder. Jimin's lips parted, his breath catching, his eyes softening into something bright and painful and relieved all at once. "You could have told me," he whispered. "You terrify me," Jungkook admitted, voice cracking. "You make me want things I shouldn't. You make me forget everything we're supposed to be." Jimin lifted his hand slowly, hesitating only a second before touching Jungkook's cheek. "And what if I want the same things?" Jungkook inhaled sharply, his hands instinctively reaching for Jimin's waist but stopping just shy of touching him, as if afraid that if he did, he would never be able to let go. Jimin leaned into the touch anyway, closing the small distance between them with a bravery that trembled. "Look at me," Jimin murmured. Jungkook raised his eyes. "I've been falling for you long before you realized you were falling for me." The words finally cracked something in Jungkook, something he had fought, buried, denied. He pulled Jimin into his arms with a desperate grip, burying his face in Jimin's neck as a shaky exhale escaped him. Jimin held him just as tightly, as if anchoring him after a storm, but reality hovered, a silent shadow around them. Jungkook pulled back first, his expression torn. "If we choose this, everything changes. The world will tear us apart. The group, the fans, the company." Jimin cut him off, his eyes clear and unwavering. "Then let it change. I'm tired of being afraid of things that haven't even happened yet. I'm tired of pretending I don't feel what I feel just to protect an image." Jungkook's hand gently cupped the side of Jimin's face, brushing his thumb along the cheekbone. "So what now?" he whispered. Jimin took his hand and pressed it against his heart. "Now we stop running." A long silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It wasn't tense. It was full, warm, with a kind of peace that had been denied to both of them for too long. Outside, the first hint of sunrise touched the edge of the skyline. A new beginning. Jungkook leaned in, his forehead touching Jimin's, eyes closed. "If we do this, it's us against everything." Jimin smiled softly, the kind of smile that could steady even the wildest storm. "Then let's fight together." Jungkook finally let the last wall fall. He pulled Jimin into a slow, trembling embrace, not rushed, not reckless, but full of the truth they had both been running from. Jimin melted into him, head resting against his chest, listening to the frantic beat that matched his own. And for the first time, it felt right. It felt possible. It felt like the ending they had been searching for, and the beginning they had never dared to imagine. When they finally pulled apart, Jungkook's voice was soft but certain. "No more secrets." Jimin nodded. "No more running." And with the sunrise illuminating them in soft golden light, they walked out of the room together, not silently, not secretly, but side by side, ready for whatever came next. Their story ended here, but their future was finally theirs.